This is Dan Tortora here at Chick-fil-A Cicero on 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, New York, for another edition of The Light Between Us. I am here with Christian Smith, here part of the team at Chick-fil-A Cicero for this edition of The Light Between Us. Christian, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
So you are on the management track here, is what Jimmer tells me?
Yes.
So how did you end up here? You came from the Salvation Army, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a Salvation Army officer for 6 years.
Okay.
And then after that, I was a substance abuse counselor with the Salvation Army for a year before I wound up here.
So working with the Salvation Army, what brought you there?
I mean, honestly, my family was in the Salvation Army for years. My parents were officers as well. So it just kind of flowed through me, and I joined up because I felt God calling me in that direction.
You said your family had been a part of it.
Yeah.
So who in your family was connected to the Salvation Army, and what did you kind of learn from them about it?
Yeah, so it's honestly been in my family for generations. I'm what you would call a fifth-generation Salvationist. So it's been in my family since before they even came over to the Americas.
Oh, wow.
But my parents were officers as well. So we moved around a lot when I was a kid, and they were pastors during that whole period. And that's just how I kind of fell into it, and felt the calling to be an officer as well.
So you said you worked in there for years, and you worked in substance abuse there.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you, and what did you kind of take away from helping people with substance abuse?
Yeah, so our facility was a very spiritual-based facility, which is kind of why they wanted me there as a previous pastor. My experience was fantastic. I got to see a lot of transformative change. We did have some failures, but that's going to be everywhere. But I got to see a lot of that transformational change. I got to invest in a lot of people's lives, and in return, they invested in my life as well. And it was just a fantastic experience overall.
You said you're a former pastor as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was that experience like for you being a pastor?
It was busy. It was busy, but it was fantastic. Just being able to share the word everywhere I go, to share God's love and His joy, and just everything about God, and speak to people, even atheists, who we had civil conversations about that. And some of those were transformational conversations. It was just a fantastic experience overall.
Talking, like you said, talking to everyone, talking to an atheist.
Yeah.
How did you get through to someone who didn't believe?
It's just about having those conversations where you're not trying to force it on them. You're just talking about the experiences that you've had and how that's impacted your life, and the experiences that you've seen all around you. Just sharing other people's stories. It's not about forcing it, it's just about having those conversations.
So when you get into a conversation with someone who doesn't believe in God, how do you kind of approach it? How do you open up that conversation and kind of begin? Like, how does that door open?
Yeah, I think the phrase "kill them with kindness" really comes to play here. We just start by having a basic, friendly conversation, and then all of a sudden they're starting to ask me deeper questions, and it kind of leads into that topic of, well, this really relates to God's love and the Bible and biblical aspects, and this is how it all relates and connects, and let's talk more.
So they approach you at where you were working? Were they at your place of worship, or how did you find them?
Yeah, so a lot of that was through social services. The Salvation Army has a big social services program as well as a church program. So a lot of that came through that, or the community events that we did. We were out in the community all the time. We did block parties for our neighborhoods. A lot of that came through those events.
So you have these conversations, and you're just speaking about your experience, speaking about the experience of others, things that you've learned over time.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting because it's a conversation, right? It's just a conversation.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, a lot of people in today's America, if you don't agree with me and I don't agree with you, we're not having the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you have those conversations? How do you open the doorway of like, hey, we can disagree, let's just sit and have lunch and talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts at the beginning where you actually say, hey, look, we might disagree on some stuff, but let's just have this civil conversation. Let's share our viewpoints and see what happens from there.
How do you kind of have the art of helping someone feel safe and comfortable in a space where you don't think the same as they do?
Oh, that is a tough question, because I don't necessarily think that's an art. I think that just comes with practice. You know, you practice having those conversations, and the more that you have those conversations, the easier it becomes for you to make someone feel safe with you.
So where would you say, like, your mentorship and where maybe some of those people have helped you along the way to sharpen, you know, iron sharpens iron, so who has helped you to sharpen your skills?
I mean, I would say my parents played a huge influence on me. And then the Salvation Army, to be a pastor, you go through 2 years of a training school. So during that training school period, there was another pastor there. His name was Marion Platt. He actually had a huge influence on me in the way that I conducted myself, the conversations I had, even the sermons that I preached. He had a huge influence on me. I would credit a lot of that to him.
So, do you have like a favorite sermon or a message that was ever shared with you?
Ooh. I mean, anything about God's wisdom would be my favorite, because honestly, having those conversations needs to be based in God's wisdom. And so that's what I based a lot of those conversations on, just seeking God's wisdom before and during those conversations. You know, having a little quiet prayer to myself while I'm conversing, asking for God's wisdom, asking for His words rather than my own.
Do you feel like there's a highway, like a, not a highway, but like a bridge between you and God, where when you ask, when you're within a conversation and you're listening to the person, and at the same time you're like, God, help for your words to come through, help me to do your will. Do you feel like He answers you quickly? Do you feel like it comes later on? Like, because some people say, well, I asked God for something, I didn't get it right away, so I don't believe it. So how do you address that, like that open communication line between you and God?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like it comes fairly quickly, not all the time. Sometimes God makes me wait for those answers, but sometimes He's immediate with that, and I think it's just situational. You know, I think that God plays that situationally based on what we need.
And I mean, there's 2 prayers that I say, and they seem to work for me, and not seem to, I mean they do. And one of them is, God, guide me toward where you want me and who you want me around. Guard me from who you don't and what you don't. And may your will be greater than my want.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on those 2 prayers?
I mean, I think they're fantastic prayers. I think they cover a lot of bases, and I think they're great for even seeking God's guidance in whatever you're doing.
Well, because what I realize is, if you're going down the wrong path, He tells you.
Yeah.
So to me, when I'm like, am I going down the right path? I'm like, well, if He's as open and honest about the wrong, then I would imagine He will be as open and honest and clear if you're going down the right path.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes that just comes with a feeling of peace, a feeling of ease. And that's how He guides you. Sometimes it is someone verbally saying, hey, you're on the right path. You know, I've said that to people before, just out of the blue. I felt I needed to say it, and that confirmed things with me. People have said that to me, and that confirmed things with me. So sometimes it is that verbal component, sometimes it's just God giving you that feeling.
Do you feel anything big or small? Do you feel like eventually, even if it takes some time, that God eventually gives you that clarity of like, hey, this is right, or this may not be right?
I mean, absolutely. You know, I've spent weeks praying over something before God finally gave me that feeling of, hey, this is what needs to happen. This is how it's all going to play out. Everything's going to be okay. Even if I was on the wrong path, everything is going to be okay.
You're talking about patience.
Absolutely.
Which a lot of people struggle with
Absolutely.
in a society where everything's supposed to be instantaneous, gratification, money, power, prestige. People just they think they wake up in the morning and at 10 o'clock they want money, so at 10:01 God's going to go, here's a bag of money.
Absolutely.
How have you learned patience?
I mean, the Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness. If I can't wait a couple of days for God's answers, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, it's just been a process over time, you know? It's day after day, hour after hour, minute after minute. We just have to learn that patience.
So how do you, I mean, you're saying all these things that I agree with and that I've come to understand in a lot of ways, but it takes having self-control and faith and hope, and in a lot of times believing when you hear nothing. How do you believe in God when it's silent?
You know, I'm going to go back to the Israelites. There was a period of silence in between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Even in that silence, I still feel the presence of God. You know, I mean, I'm going to be honest, every time I look at my baby, I see the presence of God. So even if he's not currently speaking to me, I'm seeing evidence of him already. And that confirms to me that God is real and that God is there. It's just taking a period of silence for me to get what I need to get.
But it's funny because when you ask God to tell you, is this right, is this wrong, is this the right person, is this the right path, is this the right job, is this the right house, the right place to live, whatever it may be, when you're asking all those questions and you hear silence, you get angry. Like, you're like, okay, like, give me the answers, I want the answer. But I read this and I can't take credit for this. They said, whenever a teacher gives you a test, they're always silent while you take it. So that to me explains it, you know what I mean?
That's powerful.
Yeah. So for you, you said how old is your child? Two. Boy or girl?
A girl.
A girl, what's her name?
Millie.
Millie?
Yeah.
Pretty name.
Thank you.
So you got a 2-year-old Millie. You said every time I look at my baby, I see the presence of God.
Absolutely.
How?
I mean, full disclosure, my wife and I had a miscarriage before Millie was born.
Sorry.
And I appreciate that. It was a tough time. You know, we thought that we might not ever have a kid. But then Millie came along. And she has been a huge blessing to both of us. You know, just bringing tons of joy into our lives. And that was during a period where we were asking God for joy. You know, miscarriages are not easy. They take a toll on people, and we were taking that toll. So we were asking for his joy, and I think that was his response, giving us that smiling child who laughs every single day, smiles every single day. When I wake her up, she says, "Hi, Daddy." It's fantastic.
And you had to have an extreme amount of faith, patience, hope, belief.
Absolutely.
In all of that time between the miscarriage and Millie.
Absolutely.
So when you look back on how hard that time was and getting through it, there's this notion of when we're in the storm, we can't imagine being out of it.
Yeah.
But when you're out of it, you're like, well, I can go through another one and I'll be fine. So how did you get through that storm? And then how do you look back on that storm and say, like, wow, like, we did it?
Yeah, so I think how you get through that storm is with the people that you love. You know, I couldn't have done that without my wife. I couldn't have done that without the family members that supported us, that knew what happened. Neither one of us could have done it without each other. So I think you get through it with the people you love, and then once you're through it, you look back and you realize that it was because of those same people that you were able to get through it, and you celebrate that victory with those people.
Sometimes it'll drive a man and a woman apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you, and what's your wife's name? Makara. How did you and Makara hold on to each other instead of the opposite?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest, we fought sometimes. You know, tensions were high, emotions were imbalanced, so we did have our disagreements, but we made a promise to each other when we got married that through thick and thin, through whatever, we were married. we were committed to each other. So every single day before we went to bed, we made sure that we said I love you to each other. Even if we were mad at each other, even if we flipped over in bed, opposite of each other, we always said I love you to each other at the end of the day.
You didn't go to bed angry?
Yeah, absolutely. We needed to make sure that we were together on this. We forced that, honestly, a little bit, but we made sure that we were together in that fight.
So, to somebody out there that's single in this world, that has dating apps and social media and a million different ways to communicate, people can look up people's history, they can go and find all this stuff. In the world of dating today, what would be your advice with everyone having some type of trauma? We've all been through something.
Yeah.
But the people that have all been through something these days, there's you can constantly track each other and see so how do you, in a world of social media, in a world of people going through problems and going through issues, what would you say to somebody today who wants to be with someone but is holding themselves back and kind of stuck?
Yeah, I would say find someone first and foremost that you can hold a conversation with. If you can't talk to somebody, that relationship isn't going to work. Secondly, find somebody you can be completely honest with. We all come across those people that for some odd reason, we can tell our whole life story to. There are those people in our lives, even if it's not someone you see romantically, there are those people in our lives. So you need to find somebody that you're going to be able to be completely honest with. Otherwise, it's never going to work out. And so I think those are two big points. Just find somebody you can talk to and find somebody you can be honest with.
And know that everything takes time.
Absolutely, and build that relationship from the ground up.
How did you get, so everything we've talked about, all this growth, this whole journey, and I'm loving this conversation. How did you get to Chick-fil-A Cicero?
Yeah, so my wife actually got a job in Syracuse.
Where were you?
We were in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. My wife was offered a job with the Salvation Army in Syracuse. And so as we were doing our research, we found an apartment here in Cicero. And then I just looked for what was around, and I prayed. I prayed to God. I said, lead me to what's right. Lead me to what you want me doing. Guide my steps, guide my applications, guide my resume. And honestly, this was one of the few places I applied to in Cicero around this area. And this was the only place that said, hey, we want you to come in for an interview. And I was fine with that because I felt that was God confirming to me, hey, this is where you need to be. And then I got in here and I spoke in the first interview with Brianna. And it was just a fantastic interview with her. It made me feel completely at ease. She was a very great conversationalist. We had a great interview. And then I got to speak to Jimmer. And that was fantastic as well. He is such a loving person. And you could see that just in that first minute of the conversation that I had with him. And that really further confirmed it to me that this is where God was leading me. Because he spoke on it. He spoke about how I was a pastor. He spoke about how he wants that in his unit. He wants that spirituality, that loving of God's family. And it just confirmed a lot with me. And I'm fully confident that God led all those other places to say, no, this is not the right person, because this was the right position for him.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And like you said, Jimmer, his way of connecting people is beautiful.
Absolutely.
And I have known him through so many years, and I can tell you that standing up in a chair with ALS, without ALS, he is the same guy. He's the same guy. Like, his smile, his love, his thoughts, his passion, I mean, we were talking about the Buffalo Bills, and we were talking about Notre Dame, and him and I disagreed, and I could see on his face that he was about to disagree with me, and it's amazing that his spirit, I mean, there is a lot of truth to the fact that your spirit is your spirit, and it doesn't change.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So for you, your spirit here, kind of like unveil and kind of unwrap more of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a different setting than preaching.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in a much different place, but I still get to connect with people. You know, I still get to make those daily connections with someone new every single day. I also get to see the same people every single day. So I'm still able to make those connections, still able to have those deep conversations. And I think that's just given me a whole new audience, you know, a whole new, I don't want to say congregation, because this isn't my congregation. This is just a whole new family for me.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's really how it's helping me grow. It's a whole new family for me to connect with. You know, there are a lot of different cultures at this Chick-fil-A, a lot of diversity, and that's beautiful. You know, that's God's kingdom, is diversity. So I think that's really where it's helping me grow, is having this whole new family together. And it's not just the employees that are part of that family, it's the customers as well, because we see some of these same people every single day.
Yeah.
And that's just helping me grow.
So to you have found a new community, essentially. And you try to affect their lives in a positive way. How have they, with you, with Makara, with Millie, how have they given you positive? How has this family and Jimmer Szatkowski and his wife Betty and the whole team here, as well as the guests that come through here, how have they enriched you, Christian?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as Jimmer and his whole family, you know, they were very accommodating to me in the beginning. I still wasn't moved into my apartment when I spoke with them in here. So they were very accommodating through that whole process, and even prayed with me about finding an apartment. So that was enriching to me. As far as the employees go, just the interactions that we've had, the friendships that I've made since I've been here, it's been powerful. I mean, they have really just completely accepted me and really made me feel a part of this family. And as far as the guests go, just the interactions that I'm able to have, I'm out there in the drive-thru laughing with people, just having a great time taking orders. You know, and I see the same people, like I said, every single day. One guest I saw twice in one day, the same drive-thru, and we just had a great time laughing that he was back. He joked that he just couldn't get enough of the chicken, and so he came back. But it's just those little moments that you experience with people that's really enriching. And just the laughter that you have, the smiles that you see, you know, when you hand somebody their fresh bag of chicken and they're just so happy because they're ready to tear into it. It's those little moments that are just so enriching.
Well, I can say I've been through here twice before in my life, and I can also say that the spicy chicken biscuit, which was down south, and I experienced it in Orlando.
Okay.
When Chick-fil-A Cicero opened, I looked at the menu and I was like, Jimmer, where is it? And then when it finally appeared, I was like, all is okay in God's kingdom.
Yes.
It's up here at home.
Absolutely.
So, with that being said, Christian Smith, myself, Dan Tortora, this edition of The Light Between Us, exclusively brought to you by Chick-fil-A Cicero on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Christian, it has been truly an eye-opening conversation for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a blessing.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And as always, as we let you know, God bless, no stress, do your best. We'll talk with you soon. Take care. Be well.